April 12, 1945. The air above the Elbe River smells of cordite and wet earth. For 23-year-old Margarete Schmidt, a secretary with the Wehrmacht's auxiliary services, the world has shrunk to the shuddering floorboards of a commandeered farmhouse. Each distant crump of artillery is a countdown. The Americans are coming. For weeks, the radio has been a fountain of venom and fear, painting images of vengeful soldiers, monsters who would tear their nation apart piece by bloody piece. The SS lieutenant who had barked orders just yesterday was gone now, vanished with his staff car in the pre-dawn mist. He left behind only a box of scattered papers and the lingering stench of cheap cigars. Margarete presses a hand to her lower belly, a secret she has guarded with a fierce, primal terror. A small, fluttering life, conceived in a moment of desperate hope during a brief leave months ago, is now a liability, a death sentence. The stories, the whispers passed between the women in the barracks. What the enemy did to German women, what they did to their children. Her breath catches in her throat, a small, tight knot of panic. The rhythmic thud of tank treads grows louder, no longer a tremor felt through the soles of her boots, but a physical presence that vibrates through her bones. It's the sound of the world ending. Suddenly, the farmhouse door splinters inward. Sunlight, sharp and blinding, floods the dim room, silhouetting two figures. They are huge, larger than she could have imagined, clad in olive drab and hung with strange equipment. M1 Garand rifles are held at a low, ready position. One of the soldiers says something, a guttural string of English words that mean nothing to her. But his tone is not the snarl of a beast from a propaganda poster. It is flat, weary. She sees his face now, under the rim of his helmet. He is young, maybe younger than she is, with dirt smudged on his cheek and eyes that look like they haven't slept in a week. Another soldier gestures with his rifle. Raus, out. The German word is clipped, awkward on his American tongue. Margarete rises slowly, her hands held up in a gesture of surrender that feels hollow, pathetic. Outside, the sheer scale of the American advance is staggering. A column of Sherman tanks and GMC trucks stretches to the horizon, a river of steel and canvas grinding the German countryside into mud. She and a dozen other administrative staff, mostly older men and a few young women like herself, are herded into a line. Their faces are masks of shock and resignation. The American GIs move with an efficient, almost bored competence, checking papers, confiscating the few personal weapons some of the men had kept. Margarete feels a wave of dizziness. The morning is cold, but sweat slicks her palms. She tries to stand straighter, to hide the slight swell of her stomach beneath her worn uniform jacket. An American officer, a captain, with a square jaw and tired eyes, walks down the line, his gaze lingering on each of them for a moment. When he gets to her, he pauses. His eyes drop, just for a second, to her abdomen. A flicker of something, surprise, pity, crosses his face. He says something in English to a nearby sergeant, who nods. The sergeant approaches her. "Kommen Sie," he says, gently, gesturing for her to step out of the line. Fear, cold and absolute, grips her. This is it. This is the moment from the nightmares. Separation. To be singled out. Her heart hammers against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She shakes her head, a small, involuntary movement. She won't go. She will not be the first. The sergeant's expression doesn't change. He simply gestures again, more firmly this time. The other prisoners watch, their faces impassive, careful not to draw attention to themselves. She is on her own. With trembling legs, she takes a step, then another, following the soldier away from the group, toward a waiting truck. The metal tailgate is down, a dark, gaping mouth. Every instinct screams at her to run, to fight, but her body is leaden, paralyzed by a dread so profound it feels like a physical weight, pressing down on her, crushing the very air from her lungs. She doesn't know where they are taking her. She only knows that she is now a prisoner of war, a piece of human debris in the wreckage of the Third Reich, and her deepest, most terrifying secret is about to become her captor's discovery. The journey lasts an eternity. Days bleed into weeks, a disorienting blur of motion and steel-gray monotony. After being processed in a sprawling holding camp in France, Margarete and hundreds of other German prisoners are marched up the gangplank of a Liberty ship. The vessel groans under their weight, its decks crowded with defeated men and a handful of women, all wearing the same expression of dazed apprehension. The ship is no luxury liner. It is a hollowed-out beast of burden, its cargo holds converted into a maze of tiered bunks, stacked so tightly you can feel the breath of the person above you. The air immediately grows thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, diesel fuel, and the metallic tang of the sea. For Margarete, the voyage is a special kind of hell. The constant rolling pitch of the Atlantic churns her stomach, aggravating the morning sickness that has now become an all-day affliction. She spends hours with her head over a bucket, her body racked with heaves that leave her weak and trembling. The other female prisoners, a mix of nurses and communications auxiliaries, offer what little comfort they can. A canteen of water, a steadying hand, but they are all trapped in their own private fears. At night, in the suffocating darkness of the hold, the rumors fester and grow. They are being taken to America, they whisper, to be used as slave labor in factories, to be subjects of medical experiments. The stories, seeded by years of relentless propaganda, take root in the fertile ground of their uncertainty. They will be sterilized. Their children, if any are born, will be taken and given to American families to erase their German blood. Margarete clutches her belly, a protective shield against the terrors whispered in the dark. The baby is all she has left of her old life, a fragile link to a husband she hasn't heard from in months, a man likely dead on a front that no longer exists. This child is Germany. This child is her past and her only conceivable future. And these Americans, these smiling, gum-chewing captors who seem so bafflingly nonchalant, are the enemy sworn to destroy it all. She watches them on deck. They seem impossibly well-fed, their uniforms clean, their laughter easy. They hand out cigarettes and chocolate bars, small kindnesses that feel more like traps than gestures of goodwill. How can the monsters from the posters be so ordinary? The dissonance is unnerving. It makes them seem more dangerous, their motives more inscrutable. One afternoon, a storm hits. The ship is tossed on mountainous waves, its steel frame groaning in protest. Below deck, it is chaos. Men and women are thrown from their bunks. The air is filled with the crash of metal and the cries of the sick and injured. Margarete wedges herself into a corner, her arms wrapped tightly around her stomach, whispering promises to the unborn child inside her. She promises its safety, a future, a world away from this endless violent water. When the storm finally breaks, a pale, watery sunlight filters through the portholes. On deck, the prisoners are allowed to walk in small groups. The fresh, salt-laced air is a relief, but the sight that greets them is one of terrifying emptiness. There is nothing in any direction but an infinite expanse of churning blue-gray water. They are utterly alone, a tiny speck of humanity at the mercy of their enemies and the vast, indifferent ocean. Weeks later, a smudge appears on the horizon. A murmur runs through the prisoners. Land. America. As the coastline resolves into a hazy green line, a heavy silence falls over the ship. This is it, the end of the journey and the beginning of whatever fate awaits them. They pass under a colossal bridge, glide past a city of impossibly tall buildings. Then, for hours, they steam south into a waterway flanked by dense, unfamiliar vegetation. The air grows thick, heavy and wet, clinging to the skin like a damp shroud. It smells of mud and decay and things growing with a frightening fecundity. Finally, the ship's engines slow, and it docks at a pier in New Orleans. The gangplank is lowered. An American soldier, a military policeman with a white helmet and an M1 rifle slung over his shoulder, stands at the bottom, directing traffic. As Margarete steps onto the solid ground of Louisiana, the heat rises from the asphalt in shimmering waves. It is an oppressive, suffocating heat unlike anything she has ever known. Her wool uniform is instantly a prison of sweat. She and the other prisoners are herded toward a waiting train, its windows covered with wire mesh. The cage on the sea has been replaced by a cage on wheels. As the train begins to move, pulling them deeper into the sweltering, alien landscape of the American South, she looks out through the mesh at the passing scenery. Strange trees draped in moss, wooden shacks on stilts, the faces of black field workers who stop and stare as the train of German prisoners rattles past. Everything is foreign, wrong. She has crossed an ocean only to arrive in a world more terrifyingly unknown than she could have ever imagined. The train journey ends at a place called Ruston. From the station, U.S. Army trucks transport the prisoners down dusty roads flanked by towering pine trees and dense, tangled undergrowth. The insect buzz is a constant, high-pitched whine in the humid air. Then they see it, Camp Ruston. It isn't a grim fortress of stone and iron, but a sprawling city of wooden barracks laid out in a precise grid and surrounded by fences topped with barbed wire. Guard towers punctuate the perimeter, manned by soldiers who watch them with a detached curiosity. The scale of the camp is immense, holding thousands upon thousands of German soldiers. As Margarete steps down from the truck, her feet sinking into the sandy Louisiana soil, she sees them, the men of the Africa Corps, their skin baked dark by the desert sun, now prisoners in a humid bayou. She and the other women are separated from the men and taken to a smaller, segregated compound within the larger camp. The barracks are simple but clean. Each woman is assigned a cot with a mattress, a blanket, and a small footlocker. It is more space and more comfort than she has had in months. The shock comes at the mess hall. The prisoners are served heaps of food on metal trays: white bread, potatoes, meat, vegetables, and a mug of coffee. It is more than she has seen at one time in over a year. She watches the other women eat, some with a ravenous hunger, others with suspicion, poking at the unfamiliar food as if it might be poisoned. The propaganda had promised starvation and cruelty. This baffling abundance feels like a form of psychological warfare she doesn't understand. Days turn into a routine governed by bugle calls and roll calls. The American guards are a constant presence, but they are distant, professional. There is no overt brutality, no screaming officers, none of the casual violence that had become a backdrop to life in wartime Germany. Yet, for Margarete, the fear remains, a low hum beneath the surface of daily life. Her pregnancy is becoming obvious now, impossible to hide. An American Army doctor, a kind-faced older man named Major Thompson, examines her at the camp infirmary. He speaks to her through a translator, a young GI who knows a little German. The doctor is thorough, gentle. He tells her she is healthy, that the baby is healthy. He assures her they will provide everything she needs. She doesn't believe him. She cannot. Every act of kindness feels calculated, a prelude to the inevitable horror. They are fattening her up, she thinks, keeping her and the baby healthy for whatever purpose they have planned. She spends her days in a state of hypervigilance, watching, waiting for the mask of civility to drop. The Louisiana summer descends in full force, a season of crushing heat and violent thunderstorms that rattle the barracks. The other women try to make the best of it. They set up sewing circles, sing old German folk songs, tend to small gardens they've been allowed to plant. But Margarete remains apart, isolated by her secret terror. She feels the baby move inside her now, a strong, insistent kick, a reminder of the life that is utterly dependent on her. The responsibility is a crushing weight. As her due date approaches in early October, the camp authorities move her into a private room in the infirmary.
It is a small, whitewashed space with a proper bed and a window that looks out onto the pine trees. It is cleaner and more comfortable than any German military hospital she had ever been in. Major Thompson checks on her daily. A young American nurse, a woman named Sarah with a warm smile, brings her extra milk and fresh fruit. They speak to her in slow, simple English, smiling and pointing, trying to bridge the linguistic and cultural chasm that separates them. Margarete responds with curt nods, her face a stony mask. She hoards their kindnesses like clues, turning them over and over in her mind, trying to decipher their true meaning. This place, this gilded cage, is a paradox she cannot solve. They are her enemies, her captors, yet they are tending to her with a care that borders on tenderness. The night of October 20th, 1945, the first contraction grips her, a tightening band of muscle that takes her breath away. The pain is sharp, real, a sudden anchor in a sea of unreality. Panic seizes her. It's happening. Here, thousands of miles from home, surrounded by the very people she has been taught to fear her entire adult life. Nurse Sarah is there in an instant, her voice calm and reassuring. Major Thompson arrives soon after. Through a haze of escalating pain, Margarete watches them move around the room, their actions efficient and practiced. They are a team, working to bring her child into the world. And as a final, powerful contraction tears a scream from her throat, she knows that the moment she has dreaded for 9 months is finally here. Her baby is about to be born on enemy soil, completely at their mercy.
The world narrows to a universe of pain and strained breath. The sterile white walls of the infirmary room seem to press in on Margarete, the air thick with the antiseptic smell and the incomprehensible murmur of English. Major Thompson's voice is a low, steady rumble, offering encouragement she cannot understand. Nurse Sarah is a constant, soothing presence at her side, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, her touch gentle but firm. For a few hours, the war, the camp, the barbed wire fences, it all dissolves. There is only the primal, all-consuming work of labor. She is no longer a German, a prisoner, an enemy. She is simply a woman giving birth. Then, with a final guttural cry that is part agony and part release, it is over. The room is suddenly filled with a new sound, a thin, piercing wail. Her baby's first cry, a son. Major Thompson lifts the small, slick body, and for a breathtaking moment, Margarete sees him. He is perfect, flushed, and furious at his rude entry into the world. A wave of love so fierce and overwhelming washes over her, erasing the pain, filling her with a strength she didn't know she possessed. This tiny, helpless creature is hers. He is all that matters. Nurse Sarah cleans the infant, wraps him in a soft white blanket, and places him in Margarete's arms. The feeling of his small, warm weight against her chest is the most profound sensation she has ever experienced. She stares down at his face, tracing the curve of his cheek with her finger. His cries soften to a small whimper as he feels her touch. In that instant, she makes a silent, savage vow. She will protect him. She will die before she lets anyone harm a single hair on his head. The exhaustion of labor evaporates, replaced by a sharp, adrenalized vigilance. The door to the infirmary room opens. 2 military policemen step inside. They are tall and broad-shouldered, their holstered pistols a stark, menacing presence. They stand just inside the doorway, their expressions unreadable under the brims of their helmets. Margarete's blood runs cold. Her arms tighten instinctively around her son. Why are they here? Major Thompson says something to them, his tone professional, and then turns back to her. He smiles, a tired but kind expression, and speaks slowly as if to a child. He gestures toward the baby, and then he reaches for him. A scream rips from Margarete's throat, a raw animal sound of pure terror. She recoils on the bed, pulling her son so tightly against her chest he begins to cry again.
9, she shrieks, the word torn from the very depths of her soul. 9, mein Kind, my child. The propaganda, the whispered fears from the ship, the months of anxious dread, it all coalesces into one horrific, undeniable reality. They are taking her baby. This was the plan all along. The good food, the medical care, it was all a charade to ensure a healthy specimen for their experiments, or to steal him away to be raised as an American, his identity, his heritage erased forever. Nurse Sarah steps forward, her hands outstretched, her face a mask of concern. "It's okay," she says softly, her voice full of a gentle pity that only enrages Margarete more. "It's okay." To Margarete, it sounds like a lie, a placating murmur meant to soothe an animal before the slaughter. She fights. With a surge of primal maternal fury, she kicks and twists, shielding her son with her body. One of the MPs moves to the other side of the bed, his movements calm, deliberate. He is not being violent, but his sheer size and implacable presence are an overwhelming threat. They are surrounding her. There is nowhere to run. Major Thompson continues to speak in that maddeningly calm voice, but she doesn't hear the words, only the intent behind them. He reaches again, his hands closing around the blanket that swaddles her son. She holds on, her knuckles white, her body shaking with sobs of rage and despair. But she is weak from childbirth, outnumbered and overpowered. The soldier's grip is gentle but inescapable. Slowly, inexorably, he pries her fingers loose. For a heart-stopping second, her eyes lock with her son's, and then he is lifted from her arms. The warmth, the weight, the feeling of him against her is gone. An empty, howling void is left in its place. The MP takes the baby from the doctor and turns toward the door. Margarete lunges, trying to get out of the bed, but her legs give way. She collapses back onto the mattress, her voice raw from screaming his name, her hands reaching for the empty space where he had been. She watches, helpless, as the American soldier carries her newborn son out of the room and closes the door, leaving her alone in the sudden, deafening silence.
The silence in the infirmary room is a physical thing, a crushing weight that replaces the warmth of her child. Margarete lies limp against the pillows, her body trembling with the aftershocks of a battle she has just lost. The sobs that rack her body are silent, convulsive shudders of pure, bottomless grief. Every nightmare she has harbored for 9 months has just come true. They have him. The enemy has her son. She closes her eyes, and all she can see is the impassive face of the military policeman walking out the door with the most precious thing in her world. Her mind conjures horrific images, cold laboratories, sharp needles, strange American faces peering down at her crying child. The emptiness in her arms is an ache more profound than any physical pain she has ever known. An hour passes, or maybe it is a lifetime. Nurse Sarah re-enters the room, carrying a tray with a glass of water. Margarete turns her face to the wall, refusing to look at her. She despises her gentle voice, her kind eyes, her complicity in this monstrous act. The nurse says something, her tone soft, and places the tray on the bedside table. She doesn't leave. She simply stands there for a moment, a silent witness to Margarete's despair. Then the door opens again. It is the same military policeman who took her baby. He is accompanied by another guard. Without a word, they help Margarete into a wheelchair. She doesn't resist. She is hollowed out, devoid of fight, a ghost in a worn hospital gown. What more can they do to her? They wheel her out of the infirmary and into the warm Louisiana evening. The air is alive with the sound of crickets. They push her along a wooden boardwalk that connects the camp buildings. She doesn't know where they are going, and she doesn't care. Her world has ended. They stop in front of another long, low barrack, identical to all the others, except that the windows are softly lit from within.
A different sound emanates from this building, not the boisterous talk of soldiers or the clatter of a mess hall, but a gentle, intermittent chorus of cooing and the occasional soft cry. The MP opens the door and wheels her inside, and the world stops. The room is long and bright and spotlessly clean. Against the walls are a dozen wooden cribs. In each crib lies a baby, sleeping peacefully or gurgling contentedly under a light blanket. Two American nurses in crisp white uniforms move between the cribs, checking on the infants, their movements gentle and practiced. On a rocking chair in the corner, another German woman, a prisoner like her, is humming a lullaby as she feeds a baby from a bottle. She looks up as Margarete enters and offers a small, tired smile of welcome. Margarete scans the room, her heart pounding a frantic, hopeful rhythm. And then she sees him. In a crib near the far wall, her son is sleeping, his tiny fists clenched near his face. He is safe. He is warm. He is not in a laboratory. He is in a nursery. An American-run nursery for the babies of German prisoners of war. The MP wheels her right up to the crib. He gestures for her to stand. Leaning on the side of the crib for support, Margarete reaches down with a trembling hand and touches her son's cheek. He stirs, his mouth making a small sucking motion in his sleep. Tears stream down her face, but these are not tears of terror or rage. They are tears of profound, shattering disbelief. This is what they were doing. This was the terrible fate awaiting her child. Not torture, not experimentation, but a clean bed, warm milk, and the gentle care of nurses. She looks at the American MP, the man who had torn her son from her arms. His face, which had seemed so menacing and cruel in the infirmary, now looks young, awkward. He avoids her gaze, looking slightly embarrassed, as if he understands the terror he caused. He was just following orders to bring a newborn baby to a place of safety. The truth washes over her, so stunningly contrary to everything she had been taught that it makes her dizzy. These people, her sworn enemies, the monsters of her government's propaganda, had built a sanctuary for the children of their captives. They had seen not the offspring of an enemy, but simply babies who needed care. In the heart of a prison camp, in the middle of a conquered nation's foreign soil, she has not found the cruelty she expected, but an act of incomprehensible humanity. A nurse approaches and shows her how to change a diaper, speaking in slow English and using simple gestures. Margarete is allowed to stay for as long as she wants, to hold her son, to feed him, to simply be his mother. Her fear, a poison that has coursed through her veins for so long, finally begins to recede, replaced by a fragile, tentative shoot of hope. Her future and her son's is still an unknown path stretching into the fog. But here, in this impossible nursery in the Louisiana bayou, she understands that survival is not just about staying alive. Sometimes it is about discovering that the world is nearly as dark as you have been led to believe.